Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into the incredible and frankly pretty surprising story behind one of the most iconic military sidearms in history, the American M1911A1 pistol of World War II. So, let's kick things off with a bit of a puzzle. What on earth could something like everyday office equipment or even sewing machines possibly have to do with this legendary firearm? Well, the answer is they built it. And, that one fact opens up one of the most amazing stories of industrial mobilization in American history. Let's get into it. Okay, so to really get the pistol that fought in World War II, you gotta look back at the version from World War I. See, after the First War, the military knew they needed to make a few key tweaks to the design. First step, the trigger. They shortened it up, put some checkering on the face, and added these little scallop cuts right into the frame. All of this was designed to make it just a bit easier to reach for soldiers who might have had smaller hands. All right, next they went after the grip. The back of the original M1911 was totally flat, but they replaced it with this arched mainspring housing, which was actually a really simple change, but it did wonders. It supported the hand way better and just made for a much more comfortable, stable grip. See, on the original, if you held it too high, the hammer could actually pinch the web of your hand. Ouch. That's what shooters call hammer bite. The longer tang on this new A1 model totally fixed that problem. And last but not least, the sights got an upgrade. They were made much wider and bigger than the old ones, making the pistol quicker to pick up and aim, an absolutely critical advantage when things get chaotic. Okay, now here's where the story gets really interesting. It's all about how the government started prepping for war before it even kicked off. In the late 1930s, knowing trouble was brewing, they basically gave some factories a kind of pre-war fire drill. And they did this through something called educational contracts. The whole idea was to pay a company to build the entire production line for a weapon, prove that it actually worked, and then just pack it all up and store it away. That way, if war broke out, they could just flip a switch and be ready to go, immediately. So they put out bids, and the list of companies that responded was, it was a fascinating mix. You had the usual suspects, right? Traditional gun makers like Winchester and Ithaca. But then you had total outsiders, like the Singer Sewing Machine Company, and even a couple of office supply manufacturers. I mean, really? So here's the question. Who do you think actually came through on this crucial test run? Was it a classic gun company with decades of experience, or a total newcomer? The answer? Well, it's probably not what you're thinking. Yeah, in a pretty wild twist, the established gunmaker, Harrington and Richardson, they completely failed. They couldn't deliver a single finished pistol, and the government just canceled the contract. Meanwhile, Singer, the sewing machine company, they not only produced their 500 test pistols, but they did it perfectly. The quality was outstanding. So the fact that an outsider could do this so well really set the stage for what was to come. And that brings us to our main character in this story, a very, very unlikely hero. A company famous not for firearms, but for office equipment. And this right here is probably the most important thing to remember. The single biggest producer of these pistols in World War II wasn't the famous Remington Firearms Company. It was Remington Rand, a totally separate company that made, you guessed it, typewriters. Get this. From a vacant 7-story factory in Syracuse, New York, a place that was just used for warehousing before the war, the Remington Rand Typewriter Company churned out an absolutely astonishing 877,751 of these pistols. And that number really shows you what a massive team effort this whole thing was. Now, Remington Rand handled the really complex parts, the frame and the slide, right there in their own factory. But they subcontracted a lot of the other components to specialists. You had barrels coming from High Standard, magazines from the Risden Company, and all sorts of other bits and pieces from suppliers all over the country. It was a true all-American effort. So this incredible focus on speed and massive output, it also had a big impact on the look and feel of the gun itself. Because, let's be real, for a wartime pistol, function is everything. Looks come second. Yeah, the goal here wasn't to make a beautiful, polished firearm you'd see in a store window. It was all about making a durable, reliable weapon as fast as humanly possible. So that fancy deep blue finish you saw on earlier guns? Gone. It was replaced with this dull, gray-green parkerizing, basically a tough zinc phosphate coating that was super durable and way easier to apply. And, this obsession with efficiency had a huge impact on the bottom line, too. When Remington Rand signed their first contract with the government, they priced each pistol at just under $40.
But as they really got the hang of it, as they mastered the whole process, they got way faster and way more efficient. By the time their final contract came around at the end of the war, the price for a pistol had dropped all the way to just under $24.
I mean, that massive price drop right there just shows you the incredible power of America's wartime industry. Think about it. They were able to start from scratch, and in just a few years, they were making top-quality pistols faster and cheaper than even the big established gun makers like Colt. That's incredible. And the sheer number of pistols that companies like Remington Rand built, well, that had a legacy that stretched on for decades, long after the war was over.
So all in, if you look at all the manufacturers combined, they produced nearly 2 million M1911A1s during the war. That supply was so huge that the US military literally didn't have to make any more of them until the pistol was finally replaced way down the line in 1985.
So, with millions of these pistols sitting in inventory, the military had way more than it could ever use. Eventually, a lot of them were refurbished and sold off as surplus to American civilians through a government program.
So just take a second and think about it. What do you think one of these genuine government surplus pistols, a real piece of history that actually served its country, would have cost a buyer back in, say, 1960?
An absolutely astonishing $17. And that price? It even included shipping and handling. For $17, you got a firearm that helped shape the 20th century. So what does that incredible value, something that's almost unthinkable today, what does that really tell us about the sheer mind-boggling scale of the past?